Hi, friends. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Just for one moment, I want you to think about the last time you sat at a lunch table alone. The last time your phone had zero notifications. The last time someone asked, "Who are you going with?" And you had to smile and say, "Oh, I'll figure it out," because the real truth, was too heavy to say out loud. I want you to think about the last time you laughed at a joke in a group and nobody laughed with you. The last time you planned something and had no one to invite. The last time you scrolled through someone else's pictures of birthday parties, road trips, group photos with arms wrapped around each other, and you felt this quiet, invisible ache right in the center of your chest. You can open your eyes now because I'm talking to you, not to the version of you that performs for the world, not to the smile you put on before you walk into a room. I'm talking to the one who lies awake at 3 in the morning, wondering what is wrong with you, wondering why it feels so hard, wondering why everyone else seems to have figured out something that you just can't seem to find. I'm talking to the girl with no friends. And before you flinch at those words, before you want to correct me and say I have some friends or it's not that serious, I want you to hear me say this clearly, loudly, and with everything I have. There is nothing wrong with you. Say it with me, even if you don't believe it yet. There is nothing wrong with you because here's what I know, here's what I've seen, here's what I've lived. The loneliest people in the world are not the weakest ones. They are often, and I mean this with every fiber of my being, they are often the ones with the deepest hearts, the sharpest minds, and the most extraordinary futures. And something about who they are, something about the sheer size of what they're meant to become, has always made it hard for them to fit inside the small spaces that other people were comfortable in. You were never too much. You were always just too rare for ordinary rooms. And this speech, this moment, is for you. So settle in. Get comfortable, because we are going on a journey together today. And by the time we reach the end of it, I promise you, you will never see your solitude the same way again. Let me tell you about a girl I know. She grew up in a mid-sized town. Nothing special about it. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where the social structures are set in stone by the time you're in third grade. And if you missed the window, you missed it. She was quiet, thoughtful. She read books that were too old for her age because the characters in them understood things that the kids around her didn't seem to care about yet. She asked questions in class that made teachers pause in a way that made the other kids uncomfortable. She laughed at things that nobody else found funny. She cried at things that nobody else seemed to notice. She tried. Oh, she tried. She tried to wear the right clothes. She tried to like the right music. She practiced conversations in her mirror at night. Literal conversations. Rehearsing how to be more likable, how to be easier, how to be less. She invited people to things, and they said yes with the kind of yes that you already know means no. She tagged along to parties and stood at the edge of circles, holding a cup she wasn't drinking from, smiling at the right moments, smiling at the right moment. Laughing a half second after everyone else because she was watching for the cue. And then she'd go home, and she'd sit in her room. And the silence was so loud it had a sound. She used to look out her window and watch the street and wonder why it was so effortless for everyone else. She could see it from her window. The neighbor kids just fell together naturally, like water finding its level. She wondered what was in her that was missing. What was the ingredient? Was it confidence? Was it humor? Was it that she cared too much or too little? Was she boring? Was she strange? Was she broken in some way that didn't show on the outside but that everyone could feel the moment they got close enough? She was 14 when she decided she would stop trying. Not stop trying in the giving up way. You the up way. Stop trying in the exhausting, fake, contorting yourself way. She made a quiet decision one Tuesday night that she was done performing. She was done rehearsing in mirrors. She was done standing at the edges of circles waiting to be invited in. If she was going to be alone, she was going to at least be alone as herself. And something shifted. It was subtle. It didn't feel like a victory at first. It felt like surrender. But here's the thing about genuine surrender. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop fighting the wrong battle so you can find the right one. She started reading more. Not to escape. She'd always read to escape. But now she read to escape. But now she read to learn. She started writing. Pages and pages in journals that nobody would ever read. She started going on long walks alone, and instead of feeling sorry for herself, she started observing the world with this ferocious, hungry attention. She noticed things, the way light changed on pavement after rain, the way strangers' faces told entire novels in a single expression, the way her own thoughts, when she actually listened to them without judgment, were fascinating. She started becoming interested in herself. And I want to pause here because this is important. This is maybe the most important thing I will say today. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a wound. It is the pain of wanting connection and not having it. And that pain is real and it deserves to be honored, not dismissed. But solitude is a practice. Solitude is what happens when you stop running from your own company and you actually sit down with yourself and say, "Hello, I've been waiting to get to know you." Most people never do this. Most people are so terrified of their own silence that they fill every moment with noise. Notifications, conversations, background television, music in their ears the moment they wake up. Anything to avoid sitting alone with their own thoughts. Because what if they sit down with themselves and don't like what they find? What if the silence is empty? What if they are empty? But you've been forced into that silence. And yeah, it hurt. I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt. But while it hurt, it also taught you something that the people at the loud table, the people with 20 friends and a packed calendar, they haven't learned yet. It taught you that you can be in your own company and survive. That your own mind is a place worth living in. That the conversation you have with yourself can be the most important conversation of your life. You have been in training. You just didn't know what you were training for. Let me tell you something about extraordinary people. I've studied them. I've read their biographies, listened to their interviews, sat with their stories. And one of the most consistent threads, not universal, but strikingly consistent, is that they were lonely before they were great. They were misunderstood before they were celebrated. They were isolated before they were surrounded. Oprah Winfrey was bullied, ostracized. She grew up in poverty, in a home that hurt her, in a world that told her she was not enough in every possible direction. She didn't have the friends, the safety, the warmth of easy belonging. What she had was herself. What she built in the silence was a relationship with her own voice so powerful that eventually the entire world would stop to listen to it. Albert Einstein was called slow. His teachers thought he was limited. He didn't fit. He sat at the edges. He was in his own world so often that the people around him couldn't tell if he was brilliant or just absent. Turned out he was rewriting the universe in his mind while everyone else thought he was daydreaming. J.K. Rowling was a single mother, broke, depressed, sitting in a coffee shop in Edinburgh with a manuscript that had been rejected by 12 publishers. 12. The world had no place for her story. She had no place either. No real financial security, no certainty, no crowd cheering her on. She had the story. She had the belief. She had the willingness to keep going in the dark. These are not feel-good exceptions. These are patterns. These are what the journey looks like before the arrival. And I'm not telling you this to say that you are guaranteed fame or success or a legacy. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand what kind of company you're in when you're sitting alone. I want you to understand that the architecture of greatness is almost always built in solitude. Because here's the secret that nobody tells you when you're 14 and heartbroken about eating alone. The people who know how to be alone, truly alone, not just physically alone, but mentally, emotionally alone with themselves. Those people, when they finally do connect with someone, connect at a depth that the people who've never been alone simply cannot reach. They have practiced something rare. They know what it means to be a whole person before they needed someone else to complete them. You are learning to be whole. And that is the hardest, most important, most underrated education on earth. Now, I want to talk about something that nobody talks about honestly, the grief of it. Because I've been talking about solitude as a gift, and I believe it with everything I have. But I also know that before it becomes a gift, it feels like a wound. And I will not stand up here and tell you that the wound isn't real. That would be a lie, and you deserve honesty. There is a specific grief that comes with friendlessness that doesn't have a name. It's not the grief of losing someone, it's the grief of never having had them. It's the grief of a vacant space, of watching from the outside, of going on a trip and having no one to send a picture to, of something good happening in your life and having no one to call. of something terrible happening and having no one who will just sit with you without needing an explanation. That grief is real. It lives in your body. It lives in the way you hesitate at social events, scanning the room with that practiced casualness that is actually desperate hope. It lives in the slight contraction of your heart when someone mentions my best friend the way you might mention breathing. Casually, easily. Like, of course, everyone has one of those. It lives in the way you sometimes wonder if you are somehow less real than other people because you are less witnessed. Let me tell you something about being witnessed. We have confused being witnessed with being valuable. We have told ourselves, because we've been told, that our experiences only count if someone else is there to confirm them, that our joy is only real if someone else shares it, that our pain only matters if someone else acknowledges it, that we only exist if we are being perceived. But you have been existing this whole time alone in your room, alone on your walks, alone in your thoughts. You have been existing. Your feelings are real. Your story is real. Your intelligence, your creativity, your capacity for love, your extraordinary inner life, all of it is real, regardless of whether anyone else has been there to see it. The tree that falls in the forest makes a sound. You are making a sound. I want to tell you about a concept that changed my life when I first encountered it. It's the idea of the invisible audience. When we are young, especially in our teenage years, but honestly, it follows many of us well into adulthood. We operate under this unconscious belief that there is an audience watching us, judging us, keeping score. Keeping score. We are acutely aware of our own awkwardness, our own deficiencies, our own failures, and we assume that everyone else is equally aware of them. We feel spotlit in our worst moments. But here's the radical truth. The audience isn't watching you, they are the star of their own show. They are consumed by their own invisible audience, their own awkward moments, their own fear of being seen as inadequate. The girl who seems like she has everything together, the one with the big friend group and the easy laugh and the full life. She goes home at night and she has her own version of this, her own quiet room, her own questions, her own fear that the life she performs doesn't match the one she actually lives. You are not more alone than other people. You are just more honest about it. And there is a ferocious courage in that honesty. Now let me talk to you about something that might make you uncomfortable. Sometimes we are alone because of circumstances. Wrong town, wrong timing, wrong environment. You ended up in a school or a job or a city where your people just weren't. And that's not a failure of your character. That's just geographic and temporal bad luck. Those circumstances will change. You will move. The world will open. And when it does, you will find your people with a recognition so powerful, it will feel like remembering rather than meeting. But sometimes, and I say this with complete love and zero judgment, sometimes we are alone because we are waiting for someone else to make the first move, waiting until we're more confident, waiting until we've lost the weight or gotten the job or become the version of ourselves we imagine would be easier to love, waiting until we feel like we have something good enough to offer. Stop waiting. You are already good enough to offer. You right now, in your uncertainty and your mess and your half-formed self, you are already worth knowing. The version of you that is waiting to arrive is not going to be fundamentally different from the version of you that exists right now. She'll have more experience. She might carry herself differently, but she will have the same heart, the same soul, the same essential self that has been here all along, waiting to be brought into contact with the world. Here is something I need you to understand about connection. Connection. Real connection, the kind that lasts, the kind that holds weight, does not begin when you are perfect. It begins in the imperfection. It begins in the honest, unpolished moment when you stop performing and you let someone see you without the armor. It begins when you say, I don't really know anyone here either, or I've been struggling lately, or I think about this thing that nobody else seems to think about, and someone across the table looks up and says, oh my God, me too, me too. Those are two of the most powerful words in the human language, and they can only be said in response to honesty. You cannot get a me too from a performance. You can only get one from truth. So be true, even when your voice shakes, even when your truth feels strange. Even when you're not sure if anyone will understand. Say the real thing, write the real thing, show up as the real thing. Because somewhere, I promise you, somewhere, There is another soul who has been alone with that exact same truth, waiting for someone brave enough to say it first. You be that someone. I want to talk to you about strength now, about what it means to be strong. We have a very distorted idea of strength in this culture. We think strength is the absence of struggle. We think strength is being unmoved, unaffected, above the fray. We think strength is the person who never cries, never asks for help, never shows the wound. But that is not strength, that is armor. And armor is heavy. Real strength, the kind that endures, the kind that means something, is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the willingness to keep going despite vulnerability. It is not the absence of fear. It is taking the step even when you are terrified. It is not the absence of loneliness. It is choosing to build yourself even in the lonely years, even when you would give anything for a different situation, even when it would be so easy to collapse. You are strong. Not because you don't hurt. You do hurt, and that's okay, and I see it. You are strong because you are still here, because you kept getting up, because you went to another class, another day, another event, even after the last one went wrong, because you didn't let the isolation make you mean. Because somewhere inside you, you preserve the tenderness, the curiosity, the love, even when love was not being returned to you the way you needed. That is a radical act. Staying tender in a world that has not been tender with you. That is one of the bravest things a human being can do. Let me tell you another story. There was a woman, a researcher, one of the world's leading experts on vulnerability and human connection. Her name is Brené Brown, and she spent years studying thousands of people, trying to understand what made some people able to love fully and live wholeheartedly, and what made others shut down, numb out, and build walls. And what she found was not what she expected. The people who were able to connect deeply, the ones who had genuine, loving, reciprocal relationships, were not the people who had never been hurt. They were not the people who had perfect histories and easy childhoods and frictionless social lives. They were the people who had the courage to be imperfect, the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to say, I am enough right now, even without the evidence. She called this wholehearted living, and she said something that has stayed with me for years. She said that vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is the birthplace of connection, creativity, love, belonging, joy, and courage. You have been practicing vulnerability your entire life without calling it that. Every time you wanted connection and it didn't come. Every time you extended yourself towards someone and felt the distance. Every time you loved the world before the world loved you back. Every time you kept your heart open, even when closing it would have been so much easier. That was vulnerability. That was courage. That was the birthplace of everything extraordinary that is going to come. And I want to tell you what's going to come. Because I can't tell you exactly. I can't give you a timeline or a guarantee with a specific name and date attached to it. But I can tell you what I have seen happen. Again and again and again to the girls and the women who went through this exact season of life. I have seen the girl who ate alone become the woman who commands a room. Not because she changed who she was, but because she found the room that was right for who she'd always been. I have seen the girl who had no one to call become the woman who gets 40 calls on a hard day because she learned to be the kind of friend that she always needed and then attracted other people who knew how to love the same way. I have seen the girl who thought she was too much or too strange or too different become the woman whose too much is exactly what the world needed. Whose strange became her superpower, whose difference became her distinction. Our distinction. I have seen it so many times that it no longer surprises me. It is not a miracle. It is a process. It is a long, slow, sometimes painful alchemy of turning isolation into self-knowledge, into confidence, and confidence, and confidence into a life that actually fits. And the key is this. You cannot skip the process. I know you want to. I know there are days when you just want to fast forward through the hard part and land in the life where you belong. I know the waiting is brutal. I know the nights are long. I know there are moments when you wonder if the life you're imagining is real or if you've invented it to survive the one you're in. It's real. It is waiting for you on the other side of this becoming. But you have to do the becoming. You cannot outsource it. You cannot borrow someone else's belonging. You have to build your own, stone by stone, in the long, quiet hours of your aloneness, until you have constructed something so solid, so genuinely yours, that no crowd and no validation could shake it. That is what you're doing right now. Even if it doesn't feel like building, even if it feels like enduring, you are building. Let me talk to you about comparison for a minute, because I know it's killing you. You are looking at other people's lives and holding them up against your own and concluding that you have failed some test that everyone else seems to be passing. You are measuring your insides against other people's outsides and finding yourself lacking. And I need you to understand something fundamental about that comparison. You are comparing the most honest version of yourself, your private reality, with all its mess and fear and uncertainty, against the most curated version of other people. You are comparing your bloopers to their highlight reel. You are comparing your raw footage to their final cut. Nobody posts pictures of crying alone in their car. Nobody shares the video of the night they felt invisible in a crowd. Nobody announces the conversation that felt hollow, the friendship that turned out to be conditional, the moment they realize that being surrounded by people does not actually mean you are not alone. You see the smiling photos, you see the group pictures. You do not see what happens when those groups go home and face themselves. And I am not saying this to diminish genuine connection, because genuine connection is beautiful and real and worth having. I'm saying it because the story you're telling yourself, that everyone else has figured this out and you're the only one who hasn't, is a lie. It is a lie constructed by proximity to highlights, and it is keeping you trapped. Release the comparison. You are not running the same race as anyone else. You never were. You have a different starting point, a different terrain, a different destination, and a completely different timeline. And the fastest way to lose your race is to spend it watching someone else run theirs. Keep your eyes on your own path. And speaking of your path, I want to talk to you about what you are building in the quiet. Do you know what solitude produces when you let it? It produces clarity. When the noise is removed, you can finally hear yourself. What you actually want, not what you've been told to want. What you actually believe, not what you've been conditioned to believe. What actually matters to you, not what you've been performing like it matters. It produces depth. People who've spent significant time alone tend to think in a way that people who've never had that stillness simply don't. They've had to develop an inner life. They've had to befriend their own thoughts. And that inner richness, that density of interiority is irresistible when it finally meets the world. There is something magnetic about a person who actually thinks their own thoughts, who has real opinions and real curiosity and real depth, rather than the curated surface of someone who's been too busy being socially calibrated to develop any genuine perspective. It produces resilience. You have already survived something. That fact, that you have lived through the loneliness and come out the other side still standing, still open, still willing to be in the world, means that you have a foundation that many people haven't had the chance to build. When the hard things come, and they come for everyone, you will know how to be with yourself in them. You will not fall apart because the crowd disappears. You have learned how to be your own company in the dark. It produces authenticity, because when you've been performing for an audience that isn't buying it, at some point you stop performing. And what remains when the performance stops is the most valuable thing you possess. Your actual self, your genuine voice, your true laugh, not the one you practiced in the mirror, your real opinions, your honest heart. And let me tell you, in a world absolutely saturated with performance, with curation, with carefully managed self-presentation, your authenticity is not ordinary. It is extraordinary. It is the rarest thing I know. Be authentic, not because it's the trendy thing to say. Be authentic because it is the only thing that will lead you to the life that is actually meant for you, rather than the life that is meant for some performance of yourself. I want to stop here and speak directly to something, because some of you are not just dealing with being friendless. Some of you are dealing with the aftermath of cruelty. Some of you were not just overlooked. You were targeted, you were excluded on purpose. You were the subject of the whispers, the group chat you weren't in, the laughter that quieted when you walked into the room. And I want to speak to that specifically because it requires something different. Being excluded by accident is lonely. Being excluded on purpose is a wound of a different kind. It targets something deep. Your sense of safety, your sense of worth, your ability to trust that the world is a place where you can move through it without being hurt. If that was your experience, I want you to hear this. What was done to you was not a referendum on your value. It was a reflection of other people's fear, insecurity, and capacity for cruelty. Small people attack large things because large things make them feel small. The fact that you were a target, as painful as it was, often says more about the threat you represented than the weakness you displayed. The person who gets targeted in a group is often the one who is too genuine, too outspoken, too different, too interesting, too unwilling to go along, too something that the group found threatening. That's not a flaw, that's a distinction. And the scar left by cruelty is real, and it changes you, and it deserves to be healed with care. Not dismissed, not minimized, not buried under the performance of being fine. If you are carrying that scar, I encourage you to find the support. Real, professional, compassionate support to work through what was done to you. Because you deserve to walk forward without dragging that weight. You deserve to enter new rooms without flinching. You deserve to trust again without that protective hypervigilance that trauma teaches your nervous system. You deserve to be healed. And the healing is not a defeat. It is not an admission that they won. It is the radical declaration that what they did is not going to define the rest of your story. You write the rest of the story. Now I want to talk about purpose. Because here's what I've come to believe about the lonely years. The years when you sat by yourself, when you had too much time, when there was no social noise to distract you from yourself. Those years are when purpose gets developed. Think about it. Think about it. When you're constantly surrounded by people, constantly in motion, constantly responding to the needs and rhythms and opinions of a social group, there's very little space for you to ask the deep questions. Who am I? What do I actually care about? What do I want to build with my life? What breaks my heart? What fills me with a fire that I don't entirely understand? But when you're alone, when the social infrastructure falls away and you're left with just yourself and time, those questions have nowhere to hide, and you've been sitting with them. Maybe without fully knowing what you were doing, maybe just as a way to survive the quiet, but you have been developing a relationship with the deepest questions of your existence. And that relationship, that long, intimate acquaintance with your own soul, is what becomes the engine of a purposeful life. The people who change the world are rarely the ones who are too busy to know themselves. They are the people who had enough silence to discover what they were made for and enough conviction to go toward it, regardless of whether anyone was applauding. You have had the silence. Now discover what you were made for. Maybe you already know. Maybe there is something that pulls at you, something that has pulled at you for years, something that lights you up even in the middle of the dark. It might be art, it might be science, it might be justice. It might be healing or teaching or building or writing or a specific problem in the world that you can't stop thinking about. Because something in you knows that you are the right kind of person to work on it. Whatever it is, follow it. Not because it will be easy. Not because it will immediately provide the belonging that you've been missing. But because the life lived in alignment with your deepest purpose is the life that eventually attracts the people who are meant to be in it. Because purpose is magnetic. Because when you are doing the thing you were made to do, you become impossible to ignore. And more than that, when you find your purpose, the loneliness transforms. It becomes solitude. It becomes productivity. It becomes fuel. Because you are no longer just sitting in an empty room. You are building something, and the building fills the room in a way that no amount of social noise ever could. Let me tell you about the Japanese concept of ikigai. It roughly translates to your reason for being, the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, the sweet spot where what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for all converge. And one of the fascinating things about ikigai is that researchers who have studied communities with exceptional longevity, people who live well past 100, consistently find ikigai at the center of their lives. Not wealth, not vast social circles, not perfect health habits, though those matter. What they find is purpose, is meaning, is the daily practice of a life that makes sense to the person living it. You are developing your ikigai in the quiet, in the reading and the writing and the walking and the thinking, in the thing that you keep coming back to even when nobody's watching, in the passion that doesn't need an audience to exist. That is your ikigai. That is your reason for being. Protect it. Develop it. Take it seriously even when it seems like nobody else does. Take it seriously especially when nobody else does. Now I want to talk to you about the friendship you've been waiting for. Because it is coming. I believe that with everything I have. The deep, reciprocal, life changing friendship that you have been aching for, where someone actually gets you, where you don't have to perform or filter or translate yourself, where you can be silent together and it's comfortable, where they know the real thing and love the real thing. That friendship is coming. But I want to tell you something about that friendship that might reframe what you're expecting. It will not look like what you've been watching from the outside. The friendships you've been longing for, the ones you've seen in photos and on screens and imagined in the details of your longing. Some of those are real, and some of them are performances, and you won't always know which is which from the outside. But the friendship that is coming for you will be specific to you. It will be calibrated to who you actually are, not who you wished you could be to fit into a different kind of friendship. It might be one person rather than a group. It might come later than you expected. Many deep friendships form in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, after the social randomness of school gives way to intentional communities built around values and passions and chosen paths. It might come from an unexpected direction, through work, through a class, through a shared interest that you pursue because you love it, rather than as a strategy for meeting people. And when it comes, you will know it by this. You will not have to contort yourself to fit it. You will not leave that conversation feeling drained by the performance. You will not check your face in the bathroom mirror to make sure you're still presenting correctly. You will not analyze everything you said for the 3 hours after the interaction to make sure you didn't say anything wrong. You will leave feeling more like yourself than you did before. That is the friendship. That is what you've been waiting for. And the version of you that is being forged in this season, the honest, self-knowing, purposeful, wholehearted version, is the one who is going to attract it and keep it. You cannot keep what you haven't become yet. So become. Keep becoming. I want to talk to you about the gift inside the wound. There is a concept in Japanese culture called kintsugi. It's the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. Instead of throwing away the broken piece or trying to hide the crack, you fill the break with gold lacquer. And the philosophy behind it is radical. The crack is not something to hide. The crack is something to illuminate. The history of breakage is what makes the object more valuable, not less. The repaired piece is more beautiful than the unbroken one because it carries the proof of its survival. You are being kintsugied. Thus, the cracks that have formed in you from years of isolation, from the grief of wanting belonging and not having it, from the loneliness and the doubt and the long nights and the empty table, those cracks are not evidence of your brokenness. They are the places where the gold goes. They are the places where your wisdom, your empathy, your depth, your hard-won self-knowledge seeps in and becomes permanently part of who you are. And one day, I promise you one day, someone is going to look at you and see all of that, all of the gold in all of the cracks, and they are going to understand that they are in the presence of someone extraordinary, someone who has been through something, someone whose beauty is not the smooth, untested beauty of an unbroken life, but the luminous, complex, irreplaceable beauty of a life that has been lived at depth. You are being made more beautiful by this. I know it doesn't feel that way. I know it feels like damage. But I promise you, it is transformation. Now let me speak to the specific strength of girls who've had to raise themselves in a sense, who've had to be their own best friend, who've had to develop an internal compass because there was no social reinforcement system telling them who they were and what they were worth. Because here is what that develops. Here is the specific gift that this specific pain leaves behind. Independence. Real independence. Not the performed independence of someone who pretends not to need people, but the genuine article. The ability to make decisions from your own values rather than from what the group thinks. The ability to walk into a room and know who you are without needing the room to confirm it. The ability to take a path that makes no sense to anyone around you because it makes sense to you and to keep walking it. In a world where so much of human behavior is driven by the desperate need for social approval, this independence is a superpower. The person who can act from their own conviction, who can create from their own vision, who can lead in a direction that others haven't seen yet, that person changes things. That person matters in a way that the person who always needed the group's permission to exist simply cannot. You are developing that independence, not because you chose to, not because you're built differently, but because the circumstances of your life have forced you to develop an inner authority that others will spend decades trying to find. Use it. Use it to create. Use it to lead. Use it to say the uncomfortable true thing in a room full of people who are waiting for someone else to say it. Use it to build something that doesn't exist yet. Use it to forge the path that wasn't there before you. That independence, that hard, lonely, beautiful independence, is the architecture of impact. Let me tell you about courage. Not the Hollywood version, where courage is the absence of fear and the music swells and everyone applauds. I'm talking about the real thing. The kind that happens in rooms with no audience. Every day that you got up and showed up, knowing it might be another day of being on the outside, no, it might be another experience of extending yourself and not being met. That was courage. Not celebrated courage, not crowd acknowledged courage. The quiet, unwitnessed, daily kind. The kind that costs the most and gets the least credit. I see that courage. I want you to see it too. Because when you can see your own courage, when you stop waiting for external acknowledgement and recognize within yourself the genuinely hard things you have done and kept doing, something shifts. You stop being someone who needs the world to confirm your worth. You become someone who knows it. That is sovereignty. That is the destination of this whole journey. And we're getting close now. We're getting to the part where I want to leave you with something to carry. But first, I need to say one more thing. To the girl who is right now in the absolute middle of this, not looking back on it as a chapter that has ended, but living it, breathing it, waking up in it every morning. The one who is 17 or 22 or 35, and still in the part where the loneliness is a daily weather system and the light at the end of it is more something you're trying to believe in than something you can see. I want to speak to you specifically. I know the platitudes feel hollow. It gets better. You've heard that. Your time will come. You've heard that. The speech is about diamonds under pressure and seeds underground and winter before spring. You've heard all of it. And on the bad nights, it can feel like cruelty, like someone telling you the food tastes good when you're still starving. So I'm not going to give you platitude. I'm going to give you something more specific. 3 things. Just 3. 1. Your pain is information, not punishment, not evidence of failure. Information. It is telling you what you value, what you're reaching for. Listen to it. Don't try to silence it with numbness or distraction. Ask it what it's trying to tell you. The grief of isolation is telling you that you have a magnificent capacity for connection. It means you are built for love. It means you care. Don't pathologize that. Honor it. 2. Do one thing today, just one, that is fully, honestly you, not performed, not calibrated for an audience. Something that is yours. Read the book that interests you even if nobody else thinks it's cool. Write the thing you've been wanting to write. Take the class that draws you. Sign up for the thing. Make the art. Go to the place. Do the real thing once today and watch how it feels to be in your own skin without apology. 3. Trust the becoming, not blindly. I'm not asking you to pretend. Trust it with the same faith you would extend to any natural process. The seed doesn't argue with the ground. The winter doesn't argue with what it's preparing. The person who is going to emerge from this season has been building in you this whole time, and she is going to be worth the wait. I am certain of it in a way I am certain of very few things. You are going to be worth the wait. Now I want to close with this. I want to paint you a picture. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, 10 years, however far forward you need to go for it to feel real. Imagine the version of you who has come through this, who has done the work of becoming, not perfectly, not without scars, not without setbacks, but genuinely. She walks into rooms differently, not with the armor of performance, but with the ease of someone who knows herself. She sits at a table, any table, and she is comfortable in her own skin in a way that draws people toward her than away because authenticity is the most irresistible force in any room. She has found her people. Not many. Maybe this is not a story of 100 friends, but real ones. The ones who know her. The ones she doesn't have to explain herself to. The ones who find her funny in the specific way she's funny, who are moved by the things that move her, who have their own depth and their own strange, beautiful interior lives, and who recognize those things in her the moment they meet. She is doing work that matters. Work she chose. Work that came out of the clarity of all those quiet years. All that time alone with herself and her thoughts and her questions. Work that nobody could have given her as a prescription, because it could only be discovered in the solitude she was forced to inhabit. She is still tender. She is still tender. She is still open. The loneliness didn't close her, it deepened her. She has this quality that people find hard to name but impossible to forget. This particular warmth that comes from someone who knows what it means to be hungry for connection and has never forgotten that hunger even when she is full. She thinks about the girl she was. She doesn't pity her. She honors her. She understands now that every single thing that felt lack, every empty table, every unanswered text, every night alone was preparation, was construction, was the making of the woman she became. And she is great. Not in the toxic performative way that tells people to be grateful for their suffering. Genuinely, quietly, in the marrow deep way. Someone who has metabolized a hard thing and found the gold in it. She is the gold. She was always the gold. She just needed the dark long enough to understand that. That woman is you. Not someday in some vague, impossible future. That woman is you, already becoming, already building, already on her way. The girl with no friends, but stronger than ever. Do you know what that title means now? Do you feel what it means? No friends is not a sentence about your worth. It is a sentence about a season that is temporary, that is purposeful, that is doing something in you that could not be done any other way. Stronger than ever is not a performance of strength, it is the real thing. The kind built in the quiet, the kind that doesn't need witnesses, the kind that lives in the bones rather than in the posture. You are stronger than ever, not despite the loneliness, because of what you chose to do inside of it. You chose to stay curious when you could have become bitter. You chose to stay open when you could have armored up. You chose to keep developing, keep reaching, keep showing up as yourself, even when yourself didn't seem to be what the world was asking for in that particular moment. That is the strength I'm talking about. And I want to close by asking you something. One final question. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this strength that has been forged in you, with this self-knowledge that you've built, with this independence and this depth and this magnificent, hard-won, luminous interior life? Because here is the thing about being the girl who was alone. You know something now that many people never learn. You know how it feels to be on the outside. You know the specific gravity of being invisible, of being overlooked, of having something genuine inside you that the world hadn't yet figured out how to see. And that knowledge, that embodied, lived, deeply personal knowledge, is the foundation of a particular kind of power. The power to see others who are invisible. The power to extend the hand that wasn't extended to you. The power to walk into a room and find the person standing at the edge of the circle and look them in the eyes like they are the most interesting person in the room. Because they might be, and because you know exactly what it means when someone does that for you. You can be that person. You can be the one who creates the belonging that you were denied. And that is not sacrifice. That is not settling for being the giver because you couldn't be the receiver. That is the full circle. That is what transformation looks like when it comes back to service. That is the moment when the wound becomes the gift, and the gift becomes the offering, and the offering becomes the reason. This whole journey made sense. Be the friend you always needed. Build the community you always longed for. Make the space you always ached to find. Because you know exactly what it should feel like. You know it more precisely than anyone who's never had to go without it. You know the dimensions of the ache. And that means you know the dimensions of the healing. Go heal somebody. Go make somebody feel. Go make somebody feel seen. Go look at the girl sitting alone and remember. Remember with your full body. Remember from the inside out what that moment feels like. And then go sit down next to her. Not because you have to. Not because you have to. Not because it's the moral thing to do. Though it is. But because you are someone who has been made by fire and silence and solitude and grief into exactly the kind of person the world desperately needs more of. And this is your time. This is your time to step into it. To stop waiting, to stop performing. To stop measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. To stop apologizing for taking up space. To stop whispering when you should be speaking. To stop shrinking into the edges of rooms that were built for you to stand at the center of. This is your time. The girl with no friends. The girl who sat alone and built a universe inside herself because she had nowhere else to build it. The girl who learned to love her own company before the world was ready to love it with her. The girl who is stronger than ever. Not in spite of her story, because of it. Go live it. Go live it. Go live it fully, honestly, fearlessly, with that beautiful cracked gold heart of yours open to the world. And know this as deep as you know anything. You were never as alone as you felt. I was here. This moment was here. This truth was here, waiting for you to be ready to receive it. And you are always, always worth receiving. Thank you.